Michelle, I think we've got 18 folks on the line now, and there's about 6 of us in the room, 5 of us in the room, if we want to get started.
Absolutely. Thank you all for being here. I see many of you all are virtual. I apologize, I'm not there in person. Usually I am. My name is Michelle Wallace. I am one of the Georgia Trauma Commission members, the newest one, but I am also the Chief Clinical Officer and Interim Chief Nursing Officer for Grady Health System in Atlanta. I have been a part of the Georgia Trauma Commission for quite some time in various roles. I'm excited to have this, looks like highly engaged group of leaders. So just to give you a little bit of perspective, we had an administrators group probably about 8 or 9 years ago that met a few times. And then prior to that, about 3 or 4 years ago, we started bringing in administrators again. And really our goal and purpose of this group is to be a consultative group to the Trauma Commission to help them with their strategic goals and initiatives, and to really provide that executive leadership oversight in support of what they are trying to accomplish, what we are trying to accomplish as part of the team. So this is our first meeting of a formal Trauma Commission, Trauma Administrators Group. Is actually part of the actual Trauma Commission. So I would like to, do introductions. Liz, do you want to start with the folks that are in the room, and then we can kind of go through the Zoom checkerboard?
Yeah, that sounds great, and I'll be happy to kick us off. My name is Liz Atkins. You've all received a flurry of emails from me, and I do appreciate everyone's responsiveness and trying to get folks appointed and get this set up. I serve as the executive director for the Georgia Trauma Commission and have a long history in being trauma program director and coordinator and sort of all things trauma, as well as a longtime clinical nurse.
Okay. Dr. Dennis Ashley. Today I serve as the chair of the Trauma Commission. My daytime job is trauma director and chair of surgery at Atrium Health Navicent in Macon.
Excuse me, I'm Regina Medeiros, and I am also a Trauma Commission member. I'm the Secretary, Treasurer, and Chair of the Budget Subcommittee. So I'm here in that capacity, but I'm also the Program Director of the Adult and Pediatric Trauma Program at AU Health in Augusta, Georgia.
I'm Jan Tipple. I'm with currently with Piedmont Cardiac Medical Center, as we've recently been acquired, and support our trauma program with John Pope, our trauma program director, level 3 trauma program at Piedmont Cardiac Medical Center. Third as Chief Nursing Officer.
Good morning, I am Gina Solomon. I'm the director of the Georgia Quality Improvement Program, which we'll get to hear a little bit about, but I've been around the state of Georgia trauma system for many years, so I'm excited to be here.
Good morning, I'm Damian Scott. I'm the CEO of Emmanuel Medical Center in Swainsboro, Georgia, and I'm very new to trauma. This is my first meeting.
Patrick Cook, Chief Operating Officer at Morgan Medical Center. You've been part of the program for about
That it in the room, Liz?
That is all. Oh, that's all in the work. We just had Brandy join us from Phoebe. Brandy is the trauma program manager there. Sorry, Brandy. I just wanted to give you a chance to get yourself settled. Sorry to call you out like that. And I keep looking at my computer. I apologize. We actually have a meeting owl in the room, so I will try to look at the owl. But and I don't know what's the easy way to do this, Michelle. I'm happy to run the list and have folks introduce themselves if that makes it easier. I know Zoom is a little, stepping on people's a little awkward as people are speaking. So happy to do that.
That would be great, since I think you have the attendee list, the final ones. That'd be great.
Yeah. So from Atrium Health, I think we have someone from Atrium representative besides Dr. Ashley.
So I think we may have 2 people from Atrium this morning. I will kick us off though. Good morning, everyone. My name is Delvecchio Finley. I'm the president and CEO of Atrium Health Navicent. My daytime job is working for Dr. Ashley. So privileged to join you all and look forward to learning more about the group and how we can support these important efforts. So thank you.
Good morning. I'm Sheila Bennett. I'm the Chief of Patient Services. I'm with Atrium Health Floyd in Rome, Georgia.
All right, and then we've already introduced Ms. Jan Tidwell from Cartersville. So next is Children's Healthcare of Atlanta.
Good morning, this is Stacy DeWeese. I'm the SVP of System Operations at Children's, and I support the trauma programs.
Good morning, Stacy. Next we have, oh, sorry, I did skip over someone. Augusta Health, sorry about that, Regina. Augusta University, and also Children's Hospital of Georgia.
Good morning. My name is Katrina Kiefer. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Augusta University Health. That does include the Augusta University Medical Center and the Children's Hospital of Georgia. It's great to be with you.
Good morning, Katrina. Thank you so much for joining us. And then next we have Chris. Do we have April Dukes on the line, Chris? Effingham Hospital. Emmanuel Medical Center, we already have. Thank you very much, Steve. Fairview Park. Floyd Medical Center, we already introduced Sheila. And then Grady, Michelle already introduced herself and serves as our chair. And then Hamilton Medical Center.
Hello, this is Judine Gwynn. I'm the interim CNO of Hamilton Medical Center. Good morning.
Good morning, thank you.
I'm going to jump on. This is Stacy Howard. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Fairview Park. I just had trouble getting unmuted fast enough. So I'm excited to be here and learn more about the program.
Awesome, thank you. Sorry, I'm skipping over fast. I do not have my readers on trying to look over at my list. John D. Archibald. The Still Burns Center.
Well, hello, this is Hayward Wells from Doctor's Hospital, Joseph M. Still Burns Center, and I'm glad to be here with you.
Morning, Hayward. Thank you for joining us. And Memorial Health in Savannah.
Good morning, Ray McGuire here. I'm the Chief Medical Officer, and I'm here. Normally, Shane George would also be here with us, our CEO, but he's out of town. Glad to be here.
Morning, Dr. McGuire. Thank you for joining us. And Memorial Meadows.
Good morning. This is Jeffrey Harden. I'm the Chief Nursing Officer at Memorial Health Meadows, and happy to be here.
Okay. Northeast Georgia. Angela Gary. Northside Gwinnett.
Hi, this is Debbie Mitchum. I'm the President and CEO of Northside Gwinnett and Duluth. Glad to be here this morning to hear more about what we're our strategy for the future.
Good morning. On Athens.
Good morning. This is Dee Burkett, Executive Director of Patient Services at Piedmont Athens.
Dee, thank you. Piedmont
Yes,
Walton. And I'm sorry, I skipped over Piedmont Columbus.
Hey, good morning. Bill Tustin. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Piedmont Columbus Regional. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Good morning, thank you. And do we have Marty Wynn from Piedmont Walton?
Hey, good morning. This is Marty Wynn. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for Piedmont Walton and Piedmont Rockdale Hospital. Glad to join you.
Good morning, thank you, Marty. Redmond.
Good morning. My name is Julie Barnes. I'm the Chief Medical Officer at Redmond in Rome. I'm happy to be here. This is my first visit with the Trauma Commission.
Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Polk Medical Center. Wellstar Atlanta Medical Center.
Hi, it's Frances Van Beek. I am here representing many of our trauma centers throughout Wellstar. I run our neuroservices and as well as our trauma services. Great to be here.
Morning, Frances. Thank you. And you're representing Atlanta Medical Center as well as Cobb. And I believe Dr. Reddy is on the line as well. I think I saw him sign in.
Yep. Hi there. This is Dr. Vic Reddy. I'm the Chief Medical Officer for Wellstar Kennestone.
Morning. And Wellstar North Fulton, is Lindsay Petrini with us?
Good morning. Lindsay Petrini, Chief Operating Officer for Wellstar North Fulton Hospital in Roswell, Georgia.
I think that's it. I don't think we have a representative from Wynn Army, which is one of our military level 4 centers. So I believe that wraps up the introductions, Michelle.
Good morning. This is Colonel Julie Freeman. I'm the commander of Wynn Army Community Hospital.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for the invite.
Great.
Anybody?
Thank you. Go ahead, Liz.
That I potentially, sorry, just making sure because we had to kind of go through that kind of quickly. So is there anybody that I didn't catch?
Amy Griffin joined from Archibald Memorial Hospital in Thomasville, Georgia. I'm the Chief Nursing Officer.
Morning, thank you.
Excellent. What a great group of folks. I don't think we've ever had this many senior leaders together for any of our administrators groups. So thank you so much for joining on an early Friday morning. Really appreciate it. Quickly going through the agenda, Dr. Ashley and Liz are going to give you an overview of our strategic priorities for the Georgia Trauma Commission. Liz and Gina will talk to you about our collaborative with the Georgia Quality Improvement Program, something that was one of the first in the nation, maybe not first, second or third, but has really done a lot of strong work around trauma quality improvement, performance improvement, and has been a foundation for how we improve trauma care in Georgia. Dr. Ashley has, and Liz and a few others have done some great work around understanding what it means to be a trauma center, what that cost means to us to be ready in Georgia. And so I know that there's a paper, I'm not sure if that got shared in the email or not, but Dr. Ashley is the one of the authors on it, or the primary author, and was going to share some of that and what that means to us as executives. And then to wrap us up, we're going to talk about committee structure, meeting structure, talk to you about co-chairs, need a few of those. So we will get through that hopefully in the next 45 minutes. It's kind of quick. I know we said 8:15, 8:30, so hopefully to be respectful of your time this morning. So Liz, I'm going to hand it over to you and Dr. Ashley.
Hey, Michelle.
I apologize. I just had to log in on my other computer because if for some reason it's not allowing me to screen share. So I'm going to screen share from my other laptop. I just joined that. And, pull up the strategic plan, which don't necessarily need for you to see. I know I sent that out in advance. It's a pretty long document, but I wanted to just kind of highlight the 3 pillars that we focus on in our strategic plan. And when you review that, you would see that it is quality, trauma care access, and data, and then finance. And what you'll hear about today and the rest of the agenda really ties back to that. And when we say quality, we want to make data-driven decisions, because when Dr. Ashley and I have to go up and present in front of the legislators, they want to see for the money, for the $11 million that we distribute to the trauma centers, what are they doing with the money and what does our outcomes and performance look like? This is a very data-driven administration, so they want to see that. So whenever Dr. Ashley and I can show outcomes, and you'll get a little flavor for that in a moment, it's really kind of how they want to see that. And then in terms of access and data, Dr. Ashley can give you better history about the where we started when the Trauma Commission was first formed in 2007, and we've kind of expanded and contracted. We've added, but we've also lost centers along the way. So what does that look like in the future? and where do we need to sort of target getting additional facilities stood up as trauma centers. It's very difficult to stand up level 1 and level 2 centers, but we can potentially target some areas of need, and doing that again in that data-driven way. And then in terms of finance, we have we're lucky to have our budget subcommittee chair and secretary treasurer with us today. And I don't know, Dr. Medeiros, if you want to kind of, we've evolved the performance-based pay, which you also received over the years. Again, Dr. Ashley has presented and published on our readiness funding methodologies, but it's the same methodology since 2007. The commission is comprised primarily of trauma surgeons and EMS professionals. We need your knowledge and skill set to really take a deep dive in some of this and look and see, is what we're doing, it might be great, but we don't know. We do actually need another look at that. While I'm pulling that up, anything to add?
No, I think that was great. One of the things when I took over as subcommittee chair, Dr. Ashley said, he wanted us to look at the formula that gets used to determine the distribution of dollars that go to the participating trauma centers that we have already. And as we began to dig into that and look at the formula, there were some areas where we weren't really sure where some of the components came from. And we recognized early on that we would need high-level administrators in the different facilities to kind of help us dig into that and break it apart. And some of it's based on cost norms, but it's cost norms from back in 2007, which we know are not what the cost norms are today. So helping us look at that and update the data around that so we can truly get a better idea of how much funding we should, if we had it, be providing to centers, because then that gives us ammunition and information to take to the legislators when we ask them, why we need additional funding. And then Liz mentioned the performance-based pay, and we wanted to ensure that centers that were receiving funds were performing at a level of minimum standard for readiness to care for trauma patients. And so that has evolved from the inception of the commission, which was, what was it originally, a 50-50 split of gimme money and performance money. And for the level ones now, it's 80% performance and 20% money up just off the top. So we're making sure that centers are doing, surgeon response within 15 minutes for the highest level of activation, participation in meetings like this so that we can move the quality of the patient care forward. Those are all things that we have to be able to demonstrate and do in order to receive the funding. So a lot of it's changed, but we do need your input and insight. And I'm sure Dr. Wallace will be talking about some of those vice chairs and work groups and stuff that will come about from this committee. And one of them, I think, is going to be looking specifically at our formulas and seeing if we can make recommendations to the full committee to make changes. Thank you. Turn it to Dr. Ashley, fill in the gaps.
So that was very good. There's not a lot to fill in there other than I'm very excited that everyone is on the call. And I guess what I would like, the point I would like to get across today is that we're, as the chair of the Trauma Commission and just speaking for all the members right now, it's incredibly important that we have strong participation. We call it the administrators group, and maybe that's the wrong name because you don't have to be an administrator, but when the commission set up this subcommittee, what we were really looking for was high level leadership that could make decisions and that was well informed and had the authority to speak for their health system or for their particular institution. And what we need is, when the commission was set up, we really didn't have any infrastructure in the state as far as how to pull all these things together. We had some desperate groups and convoluted groups that really tried to do the best they could, but our first job was to build infrastructure. And we have representation now from EMS. There's an EMS subcommittee with every region represented. We pulse information to them and questions. They give us information back and they participate in their budget and they make recommendations to the commission that the commission can vote on with data and with real recommendations throughout the state. We have a similar group with the trauma medical directors. The trauma medical directors, representing the clinical arm for the trauma centers, at least at the MD level, have a group, and we meet regularly and provide information back to the commission that we can make decisions about. And then finally, we have the trauma program managers group, which is made up of the trauma program managers, really representing high-level nursing and the nursing part of the trauma team or trauma directorship at all the institutions. That's well represented throughout the state with the registrars, and we get a tremendous amount of information from them. So the last piece, what we're really missing and what the commission really needs is input from our executive leaders. And I think you can see as we go around the room today, there's a tremendous amount of wisdom and firepower that we have at our executive level. When you see all you folks on the line, it does my heart good to see everybody participating. This is what the commission needs. We need high-level representation from the executive branch that can guide us, that we can bounce questions off of as we make some of these critical financial decisions. This also helps us when the commission decides that we have a need or we need to ask for more funding. We always have a need, but specific needs. It's much easier to go with a full force and everyone on the same page. And now it's a little bit difficult to do that because we don't have an executive piece to where we can very quickly pivot and pulse out information or make sure that everyone is in agreement. What the commission sees as a need, made up of the 9 members that are not, of course, Michelle is on there now, but not necessarily represented at the executive level. We do the best we can and we try to make the right decisions, but we need this group to really be educated on what trauma care is in the state, how it looks, how it affects the executive level, how it affects your institution as well as all the institutions throughout the state, and then help us and work with us as we develop the state plan. Because overall, our charge from when we were formed with Senate Bill 60 was to develop a statewide trauma system and then to take the funding that's given to us, which is about $23 million a year, the total fund package for all the trauma system in Georgia, and distribute that fairly to the various branches, EMS, physicians, and trauma centers. And so I think I'll stop there, but that's the point I want to get across is that you are incredibly important. We need your help. We need your input. We've had executives on the commission before, but you know, they rotate on or they rotate off. And so there's an ebb and flow, if you will. There might be, when we first started, we had good representation from our executive leadership, and that just changes over time. So we need a stable structure that all institutions are represented and that can provide us that information. So I think as Liz goes through some of the, I know you guys are very data driven and ask hard questions as you should. I think you're going to see from some of the slides that Liz has that we're data driven as well as a commission. The first things that we showed the legislators were that trauma centers make a difference. You may think that everybody knows that, but you'd be surprised when we started 10 years ago, the people that did not know that. We use Georgia data to show that there's a 10% increase in survival if you go to a trauma center versus a non-trauma center based on Georgia data. It's peer reviewed, it's published, it's hard, and they like those numbers because they saw that trauma centers made a difference. Second thing we did is we looked at access to care. The access was dismal when we started. Access increased from about 66% of critically injured patients going to a trauma center in this state. Only 2/3 made it to a trauma center. That number is now 85 to 88%. Tremendous increase from all the work that's been done through you and your centers and the commission. And that data is published as well. So they like that. So you see, as we move through this, we try to document what we do, publish what we do so other states can learn and be data driven. So I'll be quiet there. You can tell I'm probably at 7:15 in the morning passionate about trauma, but maybe it's just the coffee talking. But we really need your help. I'm very excited to see so many people on the phone. And thank you very much for being here. So Liz?
I think unless anybody has any questions on that, Michelle, if we want to move into the GQIP update, because Gina will have to run off and kick off that GQIP meeting shortly. So
absolutely.
All right, so we wanted to, speaking about data-driven, we wanted to kind of give you a flavor of what has been happening, because again, we're sort of starting from baseline. We're not really sure how aware everyone is of what is happening in your centers. A very exciting thing that we're going to hear more for the folks attending the meeting today later is this initiative really revolved around level 1 and 2 trauma centers. More recently, the level 3s have become involved, but we want to take this all the way down to the level 4 centers. So this is our trauma quality improvement program. This started as a benchmarking program. So whether you're aware or not, you have somebody in all of your buildings who sits there and punches in a lot of data. And that data goes off to a national entity and reports are generated that basically benchmark how your hospital performs against other hospitals, like hospitals. And they really consider level 1s and 2s to be like, because both of those centers have to provide the same level of care. When you get down to the level 3, it's a little bit different because some service lines are optional at the level 3 level, level 3 center level. And then yes, with the addition of pediatric centers as well. So Gina, if you want to just kind of give a little brief background here.
Absolutely. So yes, as Liz said, you do have somebody typing in data, and the level 1s and 2s participate in TQIP, and they should be getting a TQIP benchmark report. And it's really just a quality improvement tool that evaluates the trauma center's performance in relation to how other centers, like centers in the country, are performing. So, and we also do that with a collaborative as well. So there are several state collaboratives in the country, some very robust with that. So we also get a collaborative report, which is all the 1s and 2s together, and they benchmark the state as a whole. So there's 2 separate reports, and your individual centers, they get their individual report. They also get a copy of the collaborative report, so they can see what we look like as a whole, and we go over that in the collaborative. So just for some kind of context, there's 510 level 1 and 2 centers that were in the last reporting, which came out in the spring of 2021. For the level 3 centers that are participating, it is a fairly new program, TQIP, and it looks a little bit different. Right now, they have 183 centers in their last report. And then the PEDS, again, looks a little different because it's a different population, but there are 157 pediatric centers that they are benchmarked against currently. So what are some benefits to the TQIP participation? So, and within the collaborative, and this all came from the American College of Surgeons. They love the collaborative concept. They give us toolkits to utilize to help states. So you're able to benchmark your state or even regions, or some hospital systems can participate in collaboratives too, if you want to look that against the nationally participating TQIP centers. And you can look for system areas for improvement, because that's really important, because we really work as a system together from that. And then we want to share best practices. So we all have the same challenges. And if we can work on things together and pool our resources, that's very helpful. So, because at the end of the day, all the trauma leaders want to provide quality care. But some of the keys to collaborative success is we need some strong leadership of that. And then we have to have a culture of trust, because it's a little bit of airing your dirty laundry and what every challenges are, sort of that. And we've got to have system-wide goals and initiative, some clear roles and responsibilities, that networking, which this is a really important piece of that. And it's been so great to see everybody and meet some of the new faces. because they're your resources. We work together, sharing of results and making sure we have consistent data, because if we don't have good data going into the benchmarking system, we don't have good reports coming back to us that we can rely on. That is really our outcomes and our quality metrics, and we need to know what we need to work on.
And then as senior leaders, this is all where the rubber meets the road, right? This is what you guys want to see. And you do not have to know anything about this report. You all know that when you see red, that's bad, you know. Green is typically good, and black, you're kind of in the middle. You're doing as well as everyone else. So this is just to give you kind of a very high level overview of the kind of things that TQIP looks at. And as Gina mentioned, it's important to keep in mind, if you're a participating center, you get your own center report, and then Georgia gets a report of all level 1s and 2s, as if we were one center compared against the rest of the nation. So you can look at your report to see, are you a driver in some of those areas? This is that state report right here that you're looking at. So this is risk-adjusted mortality. 2017 is not when we embarked upon this, but this was probably the earliest report that we could actually get. But you can see that we had some opportunities for improvement here. And just through a lot of the data exercises that Gina mentioned is really what we, this is a long journey. This is not instant gratification at all. This takes a lot of time to sort of tease through. So this is mortality, right? This is a major focus of TQIP. Then we get into risk-adjusted hospital events. And what is a hospital event? Think of your VTEs, your pneumonia, wound infections, things like that. We were really terrible at that when we first started. Through the work of the collaborative and folks at your facility coming to these meetings, sharing best practices, we have done a lot of not only data cleanup, but developing guidelines to help your facility kind of standardize care. That's what we need, right? Everybody's trying to decrease variation in care. So this looks a lot better. Obviously, we want to see green there, but it really does take a while. And the thing is as you are working hard in your own facility to improve care, everybody else is doing the same thing. So this is really one of those hamster wheels that you kind of get on. And then this is similar, but including death as a complication, because if your patients are dying, they don't live long enough to have complications. So we want to make sure that that's not happening and that's not sort of impacting that longer skew towards, kind of survivability. And you can see again, back in 2017, compared to where we are right now, we had a lot of issues there. And now that is trending in the right direction. And then this is a risk-adjusted specific hospital events. And as I'm going through the slides, the one thing that I did not mention to you on the bottom, where you see all those diamonds, those are different cohorts. Those are just, if you just have to meet a definition to get in a cohort. It could be multi-system trauma. It could be penetrating trauma. So stab, gunshot wound, elderly hip fractures, elderly hip fractures, elderly, is there anything else?
TBI.
Traumatic brain injury, a huge focus of ours. So this, what you're looking at here, looks at a very specific, and it's not cohort based, but it's just those very specific complications or events. And of particular interest here in Georgia is acute kidney injury. We've seen a very high rate of acute kidney injury. So we're trying to tease out, does that speak to we're not managing shock well on the front end? The patients how are we harming them? Or how can we actually do it better? So this is kind of a newer piece that TQIP just added. So we're really excited about that. And I think that's all that we had to kind of share on that, just to kind of give you what I mentioned up front was that what you just saw was level 1 and 2 centers. Currently, level 3 centers are not included in the collaborative reports, and level 4 centers are not included either, but we're having a presentation later today. Something we've probably worked about 10 years on is trying to get our own risk-adjusted data platform. There's a company that's been doing this for quite a while with a very mature trauma system in Michigan. And we are actually, that was a $1.3 million price tag, so huge investment. And we want to bring that risk adjustment down to the level 4s, because if we don't know what's happening across all of our centers, we're not going to be able to mitigate some of those things that impact some of the hospital events, because maybe the patient wasn't managed in that first critical hour, right? We don't know what's happening. We have no window, no sight line into that right now. Anything?
I think, Liz, just let me add to that. Think of TQIP for the executive group. Think of TQIP as the gross tuning, or not the fine tuning, the coarse tuning, if you will. And what we're doing now, and what Liz is talking about, going to this second data model infrastructure, is really the fine tuning. It makes us leaner, it makes us faster. It's really just Georgia data, and it's risk adjusted. There's only, I think, Michigan was the first state that came out and did this, and it showed phenomenal. And for those of you that follow the Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and I know this group does, and the various insurance companies, they've worked with them in Michigan and have made substantial decreases in the complications, which has been tied to funding and a lot of other things that go on, which we'll talk about later. I think we're only the second state to do this, or third state. There's not many. We've followed the Michigan model. So this is really cutting edge stuff for data that really puts us out in front as a state, and will really, with your help, give us the ability to really pivot and move quickly with our complications and our quality metrics, which, as you know, anything we do in quality affects the bottom line. If I put my business hat on, and anything we learn from, I know trauma is just one piece of your huge hospital or hospital system, but if we've learned from trauma to do something there, we can expand that into general surgery, into medicine. We can learn from that, and you can use that throughout the hospital. So it's all tied together.
Yeah, that's great.
And I'm happy if, anybody wants information or discuss your center leadership. If you participate in TQIP, should be able to answer those, and I'm happy to as well. So Liz can absolutely connect you with me.
In Michigan, the company that we're talking about, certainly Google them. They're Arbormetrics is the company. They are very excited to work with us because Michigan currently does not do risk adjusted down to the level 4 level, and that is the nugget that people just cannot crack. So we want to partner with them to figure out, what does this look like? How can we, because you need to know what's important. You can't provide every single thing at the level 3, level 4 level, center level, but what is really important? What does the data show us? And we're just not there yet, and we eagerly want to get there. With that, what Michigan has done as well is they have a very rigorous statewide peer review process, where when a patient who has a 99% survivability has a bad outcome that's not easily explained, they review those cases in a peer review format. So we're working with the state attorney general's office. We got a special attorney general lawyer assigned to us who has specific expertise in peer review to write policies and procedures for us about how we do this on a statewide level. Because you don't learn from what's happening within the walls of your building. You have to really get out there, talk to other people when you have problems that you can't fix, right? We all have to kind of come together and be comfortable talking about that. So that is something that we really want to work with this group with, because we want your legal teams to review these guidelines, policies, procedures, if you will, so everybody is comfortable and all hearts are clear, so to speak, so that we can all come to the table to make sure that we can discuss these things.
What a great overview. Thank you so much. And we'll kind of discuss a little bit of what this means to the trauma administrators at the end when we wrap up. Dr. Ashley, do you want to share, or you or Liz? I'm not sure which one is going to share about trauma center readiness. I'll tell you that article is so impactful, and I have shared it to many, many leaders.
Well, I'll just make a couple of comments. wasn't going to recap the whole article or anything. You can read that. The reason we did that article, and that's made up from all your centers. It's a survey, if you will, a financial survey of every institution, the level ones and the level twos. And that was very organized by the way that came about. Years ago, we got all the CFOs from your institutions in the room. This was not our first one. So if you go back, you'll find we published one before this, maybe two, at least one. And we got all the CFOs in the room. We had a moderator, a national consultant, and we decided on the American College of Surgeons, the book that makes you a trauma center that you have to pass, the inspection manual. There's over 200 guidelines in there or data points in there that you have to meet in inspection to be a trauma center. And so we basically sat down and went line for line through the book and said, if you have to have this, what is the cost? And and some of those things are very easy, like your trauma program manager you have to have, that's a salary, they get paid, they get the same pay every year. That's very easy to come up with. But then other things get much more complicated on how to define it. It's sort of like your taxes, what's a deduction, what's not, depends on how aggressive you are. So what we did with the smart people, the CFOs from your institutions, we said, and again, this was moderated with a national consultant, this is the line item. How can we all agree? What are the variances on this? What will we accept? You know, you can't just put something down there and inflate the numbers. What is reasonable? And we got every institution to agree to our survey to the definitions of what the cost could be or what they are or how they are defined. And this has never been done before. And it was a unique idea. And this is what we came up with. So now what you see, once we agreed to the template, the survey, then it was put out to all the trauma centers. They filled it out. It was sent back in. Then it was scrutinized by the financial team, the national consultants, to make sure that someone didn't make a mistake. And some people did because it's complicated. It was pulsed back to the trauma centers, and then the data was scrubbed and then come back for reevaluation. And through that sort of rigorous process, this is what you see. And the reason, for those of you that don't follow trauma that close, the reason how much green does it take to be orange, the color of the manual that mandates what we have to do to be a trauma center is orange, the last rendition. So sort of a cute title, but anyway, there's a side note there. But anyway, a lot of humor in the room here. So, but basically, you can see the costs are pretty astounding. And what we need from this group is really for you to understand what the costs are. We've tried to slice it and dice it. Like I said, everything that was in that manual that has a cost, we've tried to put with it. There's some nice tables in here. There's also in the discussion some ideas how this relates. What should the cost be? How you can incorporate this into into everyday life. And there's some recommendations or some things just to stimulate thought in the discussion. That would be great for this committee to chew on and provide recommendations. And once you look at this and really understand this, with the firepower we have at the executive level here, you guys could take this to the next level. This is good data. It's peer reviewed. It's been scrutinized by financial experts. It's as tight as we can get it. I can defend this at the Capitol. I presented this at the Capitol. I feel very comfortable with this data. So what we need from you guys is to say, where do we go next? We have costs in these areas. This is what the cost should be. We should ask for more funding. This is how we should do it. This is where your role is really important. So one of my goals for this meeting, what I hope will come out of it, is that everyone will be familiar with this and be able to speak the language. And then through Michelle's leadership, be able, as the chair of the committee, be able to guide us what our next steps should be.
One of the next steps is this article and the prior work really was around level 1 and level 2, and we have just revised the tool to push this out to level 3s and 4s. We have to understand what that cost is, because the 3s and 4s are all getting the same just base rate again from 2007, and we're very sensitive to the fact that that may not be covering your needs. So we have to understand what that looks like. In addition, any trauma centers we stand up are likely to be level 3s and 4s. So we have to have a good window into what it costs to stand a center up so that we can adequately fund that process as well. And so your input is going to be critical for that. We want to try to push this out within the next 4 weeks. And how this usually works is getting your CFO in on a webinar, and we go through line by line. I'm not going to lie, it is a little bit painful, right? Again, humor in the room. It's tedious, but we all have to be on the same page with what you're going to get back. And then we will crunch it as we did with the 1 and 2 data, and then give it back to you. And then we'll do some validation. We do use an audit firm that will actually go in, and where there are big variances, we will look at it. But this will drive potential future funding, as well as I would love to get some data on uncompensated care around the level 3. Right now, we don't provide uncompensated care for level 3, but you're probably providing a lot of uncompensated care at the level 3 center level. So we need to understand that. So again, we can sort of modernize what we're doing with our funding scheme.
Another thing I would like to charge this group with is if you will go to the discussion section at the end of the paper. Specifically, we give not a recommendation, but just a thought process of how do you define the activation fees for readiness costs? How could this data be used to define that activation fee? Because now when a trauma comes in, you get to charge an activation fee. Those fees are all over the map. You know, and Medicare wants to know. They want to know what is the cost. And so we just gave some ideas in there. I think I see it right there. I see some numbers. I'm not sure, I can't see that far, but anyway, some ideas of, it might be up a little bit, Michelle, a little higher, but whoever's scrolling. But anyway, we go through an example of how you could divide the readiness cost up. You could come up with a formula really for what the readiness cost should be per patient. You know, now that you sort of know the global, for a level 1, I'm spending about $10 million a year. You know, how many patients do I see? If I'm seeing 200 patients versus 1,000 patients, you know, there's a different cost there. You have to be ready. You have to meet all these guidelines regardless of how many patients you need. So you could do it you could bring in the patient volume into the equation. So there's just, it's sort of thought provoking. But we need your guidance on where to go from there. It would be nice if we could have that expertise and thought leadership.
Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button. Liz, do you want to go over pay for performance quickly? Just because I'm looking at time constraints and it's already 8:05.
Yeah, and Michelle, I don't think we necessarily have to spend time on this. I think this was more just for this group's awareness. You may or may not be the one who signed your state contract for me, but we just wanted to make sure you were aware that these criteria actually exist. And perhaps the most important thing is that we are moving towards ACS verification as the requirement for level 1 and 2 by June 30th, 2023, and then for level 3s by June 30th, 2024. And for those of you who have undergone that process, yes, again, it's painful, but I think having folks, you know, an external review team come in your building and look at how you do things and give you that feedback, that's probably the next paper, is showing when we went from the transition of state designation moving up through ACS verification and looking at those slides that I just showed you on how our performance has improved. Yes, it's the work of the collaborative, but undeniably having all the 1s and 2s go through the ACS consultative process, which was finally completed by last November, November before the pandemic, which seems like we can't remember before the pandemic, but November of 2019, everybody had undergone their ACS consultative visit. So we want the level 3s to have that opportunity to have the ACS consultative visit before they undergo their ACS verification visit, and again, trying to focus on level 4s and what we can do, because ACS doesn't have a process for level 4s, but there are a couple states that have very mature processes for level 4s, and we've engaged them to give us a proposal to come in as sort of as consultants to act like they're doing sort of the same thing, since that's not offered for level 4s, and do that external consultative process for you. And also to come back to the commission and say, we've looked at all 6 of your level 4s. Here's just an overview of strengths, opportunities, and recommendations. If we were in your state, here's where we think your biggest impact would be. Because they don't know what's happening in your building. They need some level of that. Again, the readiness cost survey will help that, but we need to kind of understand that. Unless there's any questions, Michelle, I didn't really want to walk through all of these one by one.
I think the biggest, or the thing to really focus on is just understanding what it is and what that impact is to your organization, and what the responsibilities are, particularly of your trauma team, and what you can anticipate. So all of these documents and presentations are attached in the email that Liz sent to everybody last week.
And I'll send them again, Michelle, with notes from the meeting, so that you don't have to go searching.
Great, thank you.
I'll just say too, Michelle, just to tell the group that, you know, the commission has not been dictatorial about these things. This has been a process of evolution where we started out with, and I like to use my phrase, we're not the federal government, where we're trying to hide behind quality to save money. We actually started very slow, like just to introduce the idea of paid performance, about 8 years ago to our trauma centers. And we published the data on that. I think 98% of the trauma centers get all of their funding because they meet the metrics, because we walk through it very slow with them. Our goal is to increase or improve quality, not to keep money from the trauma centers. And we want it all to go out the door. So that's why we started very slow, from 1 or 2 metrics to 2 or 3 metrics to 5 or 6 metrics to now up to, I think, 15 metrics. And those all come from our trauma program manager group. We don't put anything in there without going through. Every institution is represented at that meeting. Your institution is represented at the trauma program manager level. And what do you think about this? And we vet that at the committee level before the commission votes on it. And now adding our administrator group to that to help vet some of these paper performances, like we're struggling in this area, this is where we need to improve, and to get everybody on the same page in a gentle way. It improves quality, it gets everyone their funding, and we move forward as a state. So that is the goal behind this. I want to make sure this group understands where the commission is coming from. It's not a sledgehammer kind of pay for performance. We managed to get the money to the trauma centers. Like I said, I think it's 97, 98% of the time.
That's great. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions about what has been shared so far? I want to give that opportunity. All right, well, we have about 4 minutes left. So I want to share with you what our next steps are. So as I started understanding what the purpose is of this group, everybody here has big jobs and has a lot of things on their plate. So understanding our role as consultative for the Trauma Commission in support of their strategic priorities initiative. The same thing, at the same time, it's almost a dual purpose, because each of us are administrators in a trauma center. And so what is our internal impact into the statewide system, and how can we help from our own center standpoint to be able to support? So both what we do as executives in support of the Trauma Commission, as well as what we do as executives within our own center. So just understand that. From a structure standpoint, I do need a few co-chairs. Would prefer to have one from a level 2, one from a level 3, and one from a level 4. There are clear and distinct differences in each of these, both from a size and volume, resource, as well as location. And that is probably one of the things that we have seen throughout Georgia, is our locations and size and the amount of resources to be able to support trauma care. And we want to make sure that everybody's voice is at the table, versus in the past, the level 1's dominating, right? That's just not okay. We're a large state, and we really need to make sure that we have the voice of everybody at the table. So that's one takeaway, is I would like a co-chair, and Liz and Regina and I can just, and Dr. Ashley can discuss how we're best going to do that if everybody volunteers. But hopefully we'll get quite a few folks that are interested in doing that. Once we have the co-chairs will have a meeting probably in October. I'm very sensitive, but we have not said one word about COVID today, but I'm sure many of you all are not here or on sites because of COVID. That's why I'm not down there. I couldn't leave today. And so I don't, in light of that and the statewide projections of it being high at least through September, early October, I really don't think trying to schedule something in September would be wise. So shoot for an October timeframe for the co-chairs. The co-chairs will be responsible for finalizing the charter and our purpose. I have a draft of that, understanding and in alignment with Dr. Ashley and Regina and Liz, what are our objectives and what do we want to accomplish, as well as expected outcomes. What can we anticipate with our time being able to support the Trauma Commission. We will also decide on what work groups are needed. There's been a lot of discussion around finance and readiness charges and, readiness costs, but quality and access are also just as important. And so from an access standpoint, we do have on our strategic plan, hopefully you'll have a chance to read that, the statewide consultative visit, which will require all of us, as well as quality, which you've already seen an overview of GQIP. And then hopefully, if you haven't had a chance, grab that TQIP report from your TPM or director or trauma person to be able to understand that. So need co-chairs. That is our charge will be probably in October. And then our next full meeting, the Trauma Commission has a meeting on November 18th. The place has not been decided yet. Usually right now we've switched our hours. We're meeting from about 9 to 12. Ideally, if possible, would like to have everybody in person. We can find a central location. Hopefully we'll work with the Trauma Commission and have a good central place for everyone for us to have an in-person meeting. Obviously Zoom alternative will be available to be able to bring us all together so that we have the opportunity to kind of share and collaborate within the administrators group, so we can really have that strong level of support for the Trauma Commission. That was a lot. COVID, I know many of you, all of you probably, I don't see everybody's numbers, but I know our numbers for trauma are double where we have been in the last 18 months. Are very, very high in many different ways. And so I think those are all things that we need to take into consideration from the trauma administrators group. So any questions about that? Liz, Dr. Ashley, any wrapping up, Regina, any words?
I did see the comment from Dr. Reddy from Wellstar that he's from Ann Arbor and has experience with Arbormetrics. So I'm volunteering Dr. Reddy to be on the peer review policy procedure guideline committee.
Accurate. That's great. That's great.
If you enter the chat room, you could be called. So be aware. Full warning. Thank you, Dr. Reddy. That's awesome. I would just again like to say I know that our leadership, we appreciate you, what you do, and to have you on the phone at 7 o'clock in the morning means a lot to the commission. We really appreciate it. Your participation is highly important as we go to the next level, and we hope that you will continue to participate, and we really appreciate your participation this morning.
Any last questions from the group? 8:16, we're 1 minute over. All right, so I'll be looking forward to some volunteers for co-chairs, and then we will move from there as to next steps. And if you have a chance, please read the readiness article, particularly Dr. Ashley said focus around how we define our activation fees. Great, thank you all so much for being here so early on a Friday morning. Please stay safe and let me know if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.